What's up guys, it's Lava Lord, and Help Wanted 2 is a video game created by Stuhl Studios and has a story. Help Wanted 2 is a hard one to talk about since coming out of Ruin, which was arguably easy to theorize about, Help Wanted 2 is super convoluted. Ruin didn't ask many questions outside of Cassie's dad and Glamrock Bonnie, so Help Wanted 2 focused on answering questions from earlier FNAF games. And as in earlier FNAF games, I mean earlier FNAF games. Unlike my Glamrock Bonnie theory from last month, I'll be tackling a bunch of the important mysteries from Help Wanted 2, since after I watched those endings, I was left speechless. And not in the good way.
This is so freaking weird. This is so freaking weird. This is so freaking.
These big theory videos take a long time to produce compared to my normal gameplay content, so I would appreciate any sort of support I can get on this one. Now before we talk about Help Wanted 2, I need to state a few things. First up, I'm not some crazy mastermind that came up with everything here. With Ruin, I was able to talk with Meatloaf Man and Theorists together, but because reasons, I can't do that here. I just watched the game so I could be on the same page, but that makes this game really hard to theorize about, especially for such a complex game. So I took to YouTube and Twitter to look for ideas to expand upon or at least find a lead. Some of the YouTubers I watched were Rytoast and Tom and ID's Fantasy. I also watched a bunch of lesser known theorists, but I obviously have to give credit where credit is due. And this isn't just me stealing content. Theorizing takes multiple minds so you can contradict and counter your thoughts. Without that, it makes things much harder. So go watch their videos after this one. The second thing to discuss is something I originally didn't like at first, but learned to roll with. I introduced to you what I like to call the Scott Clarification Law. This law states if there is a mystery or popular theory from a FNAF game, Scott tries to clarify that question in the upcoming games. For example, a popular question from Security Breach was what happened to Glamrock Bonnie. Later, Ruin came out and confirmed a bunch of theories and debunked a bunch too. One of the popular theories from the game theorists was that Vanny disassembled Bonnie to build Burn Trap. That was later debunked because of Bonnie's hand still being present on him. I'll be using that logic sometimes in this video, so you're aware. Lastly, let's recap the two endings we have. Let's start with the easier one to explain, the main ending. In order to unlock this ending, you need to do nothing more than complete every minigame. Throughout the playthrough, you'll be getting these FNAF Power Rangers-like figures from a show called Faz Force. Once you collect all the figures and put them on the pedestal, they disappear and you get one new figure. It's a combination of all the other figures called the Fazbotatron. After a couple seconds pass, you'll be greeted with a charge pod from Security Breach. A hand will reach out and grab the edge of the charge pod, very similar to how Burn Trap did in Security Breach. You will then face a bunch of staff bots and they will all gang up on you. Then your screen goes black, you see a boot up screen very similar to the one in Security Breach until next seeing you holding the Vanny mask and giving it to Cassie to wear. Then, the credits roll. If you thought that was crazy, you have no idea what you're about to hear come out of my mouth. The second ending you can get is the Princess Quest 4 ending. In order to unlock this ending, you have to collect a series of plushies scattered around the minigames. The graffiti in the main hub help indicate where to look, but YouTubers have also put tutorials as well on how to get these fellas. These plushies are of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Golden Freddy, and the Puppet. Once you get all the plushies, Mr. Kippo will have a special purple glitchy coin to give to you. You insert that coin into the Princess Quest 4 machine, then you get transported into a completely empty room with nothing but the arcade machine, which I completely called, by the way.
I knew it! Yes!
You play Princess Quest 4 like normal, nothing really happening here, until eventually you open a locked door similar to the one from Princess Quest 3. Upon opening that door, you are greeted with a completely empty room with nothing but the arcade machine and a blue man playing it. But if you look behind you...
What? Oh my god!
Yes, the princess is literally in the same room as you, which is pretty crazy, and I myself was absolutely baffled. What you have to do next is hit yourself with the princess's sword using the arcade buttons. Then the screen goes white and you see the arcade machine with the text, "Take it." You grab the sword and you are officially inside the Princess Quest 4 machine playing Princess Quest. This is a really cool segment and it's probably one of the craziest moments of FNAF, let alone all of Help Wanted 2. Anyways, you play through the game until you reach a graveyard that is identical to that of Princess Quest 1. You light the gravestones in the correct order in advance. But it is actually important to address the fact that if you put a secret code, you unlock a secret chest. Once you open this chest, you collect a body mask with the text above it that reads, "This looks familiar." Keep that in mind because it's actually extremely important to a lot of what I'm talking about in this video. Anyways, you walk into a room with that old red dude. The Vanny mask appears, text something along the lines of "I think it's a fair trade" appear above his head, and the Glitch Trap plushie appears next. Then the freaking sister location elevator opens up and you walk in. This elevator ride literally lasts for 5 seconds, which is really weird. You eventually end up in a claw machine with Vanny staring at you. Moon comes up to you with his hand out and you give him the Glitch Trap plushie. He gives that plushie to Vanny and somehow brings Glitch Trap to life or something, I don't know. Then we see Vanny seemingly crush him and then walk away. Then the credits roll. So now that we're all up to speed, let's start theorizing. One of the big things from Ruin was the endless mentions of Cassie's dad. Cassie's dad was something that kept getting brought up, and theorists were actually able to figure out a lot of Cassie's dad lore. Just from Ruin, we know that he was a Fazbear technician. He was most likely dead because every time he was brought up, it was in the past tense. He loved Bonnie and some other miscellaneous stuff that isn't too important. Help Wanted 2 not only expands on this guy, but actually focuses on him for like half of the game's story. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. We play as Cassie's dad. There is just too much evidence to back this up, and when speaking about the timeline, it all makes sense. In Help Wanted 2, you are given a Faz wrench and he instantly knows how to use it, but even if you think that's speculation, there are just straight up facts too. In the Steel blog posts, it says you are the last human employee working for Fazbear, and there aren't any in Ruin. A majority of the reasons I can't really talk about yet because either A, it has to do with more Cassie's dad lore, or B, it has to do with the timeline, which I will both cover in this video. But for now, just trust me, it's 100% Cassie's dad. That's not all we get from Cassie's dad, far, far from it actually. The first and easiest thing to discuss is how he is the mask bot from Ruin. First and foremost, we are seen giving Cassie the Vanny mask in the main ending, but also, Maskbot has what looks like a brain. We also get the information that the Vanny mask was left by a Faz technician, so that's just clear as day. Now, we get into the tricky stuff. A popular theory, again given out to the public by the game theorists, was if Cassie's dad was actually the Bonnie bully from the Bite of 83. This has since been proven correct. Now's a better time than ever to make this clear. This is just a theory, and nearly nothing in this video is fact. But sometimes, FNAF is just obvious. To start, the Bonnie mask clearly means something. If the mask is familiar, it's probably because, oh, I don't know, maybe he wore it as a teen. Also, there's an Easter egg on the back of the Faz wrench. There's a code that reads 395248. If you're a big enough fan, this should come back to you. This is the same code you use to unlock the Stage 01 minigame in FNAF 3, which is directly related to Golden Freddy, Spring Bonnie, and Fredbears in general. Another thing I realized is that if Help Wanted 2 takes place in the FNAF 6 establishment, and if FNAF 6 was presumably Fredbear's at one point, that would mean the stage right in front of him, the entire game, was the stage in which the bite happened. That would be crazy. Now to get into some crazy territory and probably one of the hardest parts of this theory. Cassie's dad is actually Jeremy from FNAF 2. Okay, hear me out, it'll make sense in a couple of minutes. To start, the FNAF 2 paycheck obviously doesn't say Mike, so it's someone else. Jeremy Fitzgerald was most likely the victim of the Bite of 87, no, the actual Bite of 87. This is okay because 1, he was moved to the day shift after night 6, which means he lived that. 2, it can't be the phone guy because he's in FNAF 1, and lastly, if it was just a random kid, why would it be brought up so much? Now you might be wondering, if Jeremy got bit, wouldn't he be dead by this point? Well, no, actually. In the FNAF 1 Night 1 phone call, phone guy mentions this while talking about the Bite of 87.
It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
This means he survived the bite, somehow. Although this was a miracle, it did permanently damage him for the rest of his life. After some quick googling, damage to the frontal lobe affects how well you remember things. So with all of this newfound information, it makes sense why the Bonnie mask is familiar, but he doesn't completely remember it. But now, allow me to introduce a character that had way more lore relevance than any of us would have thought. Mystic Hippo. Mystic Hippo says random dialogue throughout the game that actually helps solve this theory with Jeremy. Mystic Hippo says, "Do you remember?" This is most likely hinting towards Cassie's dad forgetting his past. Her and some other characters also say, "What makes you so special?" To me, this can be seen as him and the other bullies from the bite. All the same bullies who killed the crying child. They were all to blame. Mystic Hippo also says, "Use the key to confront the darkness." This on its own is very weird and cryptic, but paired with another piece of dialogue that reads, "The key is familiar to you, something has changed," it's quite clear what this means. This key is described as familiar, just as the Bonnie mask is described as familiar. The Bonnie mask is the key to confront the darkness, which means discovering his past and remembering the bite in the FNAF 2 location. What I'm about to say now is completely okay to argue with since it's still a work in progress, but I think I have all the evidence I need to say Jeremy Fitzgerald from FNAF 2 is Jeremy from FNAF Help Wanted. Now this is a very bold claim, but just hear me out on this one. Since FNAF 2 Jeremy survived the Bite of 87, there is nothing stopping him timeline-wise. Also, since he forgot everything pre-Bite, he probably won't raise any suspicions with Fazbear Entertainment at first. The only thing that can disprove this is if there is a last name for Help Wanted Jeremy, or he will get one in the future. And using the Scott clarification law, this can totally be explained in future installments. Also going back to the Bonnie Bully segment, Mystic Hippo also says, "Do you ever look at your hands? I mean, really look at your hands." This can mean a few things. Theorist Antom believes when we look at our hands, they're transparent blue and we're actually dead. I think this is just remembering the murder that he and his friends technically caused. Just like the expression, blood on your hands. With all this evidence, I think it's only clear that Cassie's dad's official name is Jeremy Fitzgerald. Jeremy originally caused the bite of 83, which changed Fazbear forever, then later went on to work at the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the grand reopening. He would eventually get switched over to the day shift and get bitten by an animatronic. Their new facial scanners detected a predator a mile away. It saw Jeremy as a bad man, causing the infamous bite of 87. He would live though, and after many years go back to work for Fazbear. The whole Tape Girl story happens, and he eventually ends up in Help Wanted 2, which I will explain in a second. All of this makes complete sense, and I haven't found any plot holes yet. Jeremy Fitzgerald is Help Wanted Jeremy, who is also Cassie's dad, who is the OG Bonnie Bully. To be honest, I am so glad we are finally done with Cassie's dad. Everything else will be more straightforward and much, much shorter.